George, you want to sit up here? Can we make way for George to this chair here, please?
Can I put an umbrella up?
Huh? Whatever you need to do. The sun's going to be behind that tree in a minute. All right, are you ready?
There's a couple of chairs on the table.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Abe Bonowitz. We are here at the end of, for the evening teaching on day 2 of the 32nd annual fast and vigil to abolish the death penalty at the United States Supreme Court, which at this time it's entirely appropriate that the United States Supreme Court is masked because those in law enforcement are hiding, and some of them, and doing things that are unconstitutional, as is this court on this issue, on the death penalty. So welcome, we're glad you're here, and I'm amazed because we don't often run out of chairs, so if you don't have a chair, I'm sorry. We've got another pad over here for people sitting on the floor. Can you put that in a place where people can see if there's other people that will sit on the ground? That'd be great. And I guess that we'll need to see if we can't get more chairs for the subsequent events, the rest of this event. On Wednesday, it's going to be gorgeous, and if you have a chair that you can bring yourself, then I would encourage that, because we have 2 more excellent programs after tonight's excellent program. So, for those who haven't been here before or haven't seen this or are watching online, and just for the record, today is the second day of the 32nd annual fast and vigil to abolish the death penalty here at the United States Supreme Court. We're on the sidewalk in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, and we are here because on June 29th, 1976, Allie, can you pan over to this banner? The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Furman versus Georgia to strike down all death penalty laws in the country, forcing any state that wanted to have a death penalty to write new laws, many of which did. And then I'm going to ask Jack and Dina to turn around, to actually stand up and flip that banner. So step forward, Dina. There you go. And on July 2nd, 1976, we have the Gregg versus Georgia decision, in which the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the new laws that allowed the resumption of executions, which occurred starting on January 17, 1977. And since then, it's been 49 years, and we have had 1,632 executions by various states and the federal government. And our goal is, of course, to stop executions. And this is going to be a long haul. But as we heard from Rob Dunham last night, and if you haven't heard that talk or the other excellent talks from last night, you can find it on the Death Penalty Action YouTube and Facebook and X and some other channels too. You can hear Rob's actually rather hopeful, in a way, dour understanding of this issue, which is how awful it is right now and how this is actually a recipe towards one day coming to abolition. I will share with you that when I was, that would have been 1995-ish in New Orleans at the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty annual conference, I then declared that we would abolish the death penalty by the time I turned 50. I'm sorry to tell you that I'm now 58. And we're nowhere near there. But we have actually abolished the death penalty in New Jersey, New Mexico, Illinois, Connecticut, Maryland, New Hampshire, Nebraska, Colorado, Virginia, Washington, Delaware. Now, I did mention Nebraska. We passed the bill in Nebraska. The governor vetoed that bill. and then they overrode the veto, and then the governor used his own money to put it on the ballot, and of course it was reversed on by initiative, and they had one execution of one person was at that time on death row for about 40 years. But otherwise, they've all stuck, and in fact, we have seen Washington State scrub its language, allowing the death penalty, and also Delaware. Last year, the state of Delaware, the first state, abolished, or rather in 2016, Delaware's Supreme Court struck down Delaware's death penalty law, invalidating it, finding it unconstitutional. And then last year in 2024, right about now, on June 30th, last year, they passed a bill that scrubbed all of the death penalty language out of the statute in Delaware, so it doesn't exist anymore. Now, there's one more step that our friends at Delaware Citizens Opposed to the Death Penalty have been working on, and that is actually enacting a constitutional prohibition disallowing the death penalty in the Delaware state constitution. Now, if Delaware is successful in doing this, it'll only be the second state in the entire country that has a constitutional prohibition against the death penalty. Now, Oregon did have one, but they overturned it. So Michigan has it, and now maybe Delaware will. And I'm going to be watching my phone because we're waiting for them to have that vote. It's happening now. And I texted our friends down there at Ledge Hall in Dover. They said, and it's sometime after 5:30, they hope. Well, it's after 5:30. Could go till midnight. You know, this is one of those things where everybody wants to get their bills done. But the bottom line is that tonight we might have something to celebrate, and we're all going to do that when it happens. So that's the space that we're in. There's so much more we could talk about. Welcome, everybody. Stick around. You're about to hear some fascinating stories, and we're grateful for our turnout tonight. I do want to welcome all of the folks that have arrived from Amnesty International in Florida. And got a whole group of people here. I want to welcome everybody else that has arrived. We're going to hear some of the new voices today. We've got new people from Florida, new people from Texas. Where's Braden? There he is back there. And a whole lot of people have been here before, and a lot of new faces too. So without further ado, welcome, thank you. I'll mention also for those of you that aren't situated here yet, if you need a bathroom during this, just take it. We're not going to take a break during the program. But that building right there that says United Methodist Building, if you go there and you get to the door and you press the little button on the door, on the side of the door, it'll chime, and then listen, put your hand on the handle and listen for the door to click. And when it does, you push it open. And then you get inside, and Josh, our security guy, will then let you through the second door, and then the bathrooms are go to the elevators, turn right, go around the corner, that's where you'll find them. If you need something to drink, we have some water and some Gatorade right here behind me. Maybe I can get a couple of volunteers to slide that beverage table over a little bit, or not, it's fine where it is. But at the end of the day, those hopefully will cover all of your needs. And we're grateful to be back outside. So now, our MC tonight is a dear friend and a leader in our movement who is constantly present on this and many other issues. He is the executive director of the Ohio Council of Churches, a former executive director of Murder Victim Families for Reconciliation, the chairman of the board, former chair of the board of Ohioans to Stop Executions. Is that right? You were chair?
Former.
And also, he's probably got a bunch of other identifiers. He is Reverend Doctor, also the chairman of the board of Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing. He's going to share a little bit about all of these things and more as he weaves tonight's program together. Please welcome Reverend Dr. Jack Sullivan, Jr., my fellow Ohioan.
All right, I'm green. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Abe, for your wonderful introduction. Very kind. I'm privileged to join you all tonight. This is my 10th fast and vigil. in a row. Look, I can't remember my hair was all one color. This is the first time, though, that I've worn a collar during the fast and vigil. I put this collar on this morning because I knew I would be connected with more Monday movement that took place here this morning. And so I always wear a collar when I'm attending protest marches and movements around the country. It keeps me out of jail. but I told friends today that I would take the collar off once the more Monday event ended and I returned back to the fast and vigil. Well, I didn't take it off, as you can see, because I wanted to remind myself and perhaps all of you of the sacred quality of our time together every time we gather in front of the court. So this is a place where stories of love and loss and life are shared before the general public, people who walk by, occupy seats like all of you tonight. These are stories that are sacred. And so when we gather like this, we turn whatever environment we're in, whatever venue we're in, into a sacred place. And we are sacred people at a sacred place at an important time in the life of our country. And I'm so glad to share this space and this moment with all of you this evening. I'm ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, U.S. and Canada. I've been a minister for 40 something years now. I know you thought maybe 10, but it's been 40 years now. And so it's fitting that my story that I'm going to share a portion of right now begins with church. I was at a church convention in Denver, Colorado, 28 years ago, dancing my way through the night, last night of our gathering there, when I got a phone message. This is before cell phones. So someone found that I was in a hotel ballroom dancing all night, and that's how they could reach me, by calling that hotel ballroom. So I walked away from the dance floor. Could not dance very well, still can't. But I walked away from the dance floor, took that phone call, and I received a message that would change my life. That my baby sister, Jennifer Ann McCoy, all of 21 years of age, had been shot to death in her home in Cleveland, Ohio, with her then 2-year-old daughter in the house. And somehow I made my way from that corridor where I took that call back to the dance floor. However, by then the beat, the music had stopped. And there were just beating hearts there in that room as people understood that I had received tragic, life-changing news. And somehow, by the grace of God, that ballroom was transformed into a sanctuary, a sacred space where people prayed with me and for me and sent me back to Detroit, where I lived then, and then on to Cleveland, Ohio, to attend to my family and deal in the aftermath of Jennifer's horrific murder. I'll tell you more about my story later, but I wanted to present someone today who will give us her story. Brandi Melissa is here from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where she's been an advocate on a variety of issues. Here to share her story tonight is Brandi Melissa. Great. There you go.
Oh,
Hold on right up to
like I told y'all Sunday night, I think. I think the one, because you can tell I'm looking like a lobster. I came here looking like a shrimp, but now I look like a lobster. I also joked that I brought the humidity up here. When I'm home, I never get sunburned. Before I left, we hit 105 heat index. I'm gonna go way, way, way back to 5th grade. I'm about to be 41, even though I know some of y'all think I'm in my 20s. I love you. Back when I was in 5th grade, when Antonio James was executed in Louisiana, is when I started keeping up with Sister Helen. Unfortunately, before that, I became someone who was a staunch supporter of capital punishment because there is currently somebody on death row who killed the police officer who the morning of Hurricane Andrew literally risked her life to save mine. And from the time I heard my mom have a blood curdling scream in our 3-bedroom apartment the night that Corporal Smothers was killed, I ran in the living room thinking my dad had broken because we had relocated to Baton Rouge from Acadiana because of domestic violence. I watched him strangle her in front of me when I was 6, and she had to be resuscitated twice. Anyway, and I asked her what happened, and she said the cop that saved your life the morning of the hurricane was killed. And I said, can they please fry the dude that did it? Because this woman literally, we had parked because we were going volunteer for the Red Cross at the shelter. They had one of the Citroflex was used as a shelter, and we were going volunteer. And Corporal Mother was standing against the building, and I was small, 8 years old, and she obviously thought I was about to fly over, so she ran when the wind and rain was crazy, and grabbed me and told my mom to meet us in the building. So at that point, I was totally, I didn't care how they killed him. I wanted them dead. I would kill him myself. Then I've had a few other encounters with the South Louisiana serial killer who ended up dying of a heart attack and a few other things. But what changed me is when our new governor, who claims to be a pro-life Christian, supporter of Israel, defender of the Ten Commandments in court. I mean, they've been here about that, all that crap. He decided when Alabama gassed Kenny to death that in our special session on crime, the next month that they would add it to the execution methods and say haven't executed anybody in 15 years. And actually the last state section execution in Louisiana before March 18th of this year was 2002. The one they did 15 years ago, the guy was tired of waiting. So that's how that happened. But when Kenny got executed, I had a media friend who works for one of the affiliates who now lives in another state around here asked me if I heard any news about it, and I came across the press conference that they were doing for Jeff was doing with 8's channel. And so I sent it to her. I said, I don't know what side of the fence this is on, but it looks like it's on decent. And so here you go. Because they wasn't, I could tell that nothing that happened was being sugarcoated like they normally do. Before Jeff Landry took office, I was literally during the clemency hearings texting his staff to deny all of them hearings. Don't even give them, let them do what they do. But that was before gas became an issue. And when that became an issue because of what happened in the darkest part of history, I could not. I mean, I knew Isaiah 12:3 before I knew how to spell my name, and I'm not joking. My mom did not play about that. So when they had the bill, they allowed the bill to pass that allowed gas suffocation. We actually have a senator that said it was her responsibility and her duty to pass that, to vote for that bill. But they had a bill to remove it, and I testified against it, and I had how dare you messages from certain people that I will not name. And I really turned it back on them because I'm like, y'all claim to be pro-life, but yet you care about somebody's uterus, but you don't care about gassing somebody to death when you have Jewish people sitting here and you're telling them, they literally told the Jewish people that it was no comparison. I sat there cringing. But then I reached out to Abe and I was beside myself because, like I said, I was a hardcore supporter. But it took our governor for being a royal hypocrite, to literally, I never thought I'd see the day where anybody would be gassed to death on American soil, much less in the most pro-life, quote unquote, state in the country. And I can say that because my mom was forced to have an abortion and I lived through it. After domestic violence didn't kill me, can't y'all tell I'm stubborn? Um, but okay, can you hear me? Um, but so I reached out to Abe, and then they ended up scheduling the executions. I mean, the first person in Louisiana wanted to kill was somebody who was on hospice. They couldn't get function. Then they had to. He ended up passing away on his own, and they had somebody else, but they had to. He wasn't done with his appeal, so when the one they got to go through was the one that was married to the lady that's too. That will forever be in Jeffrey Ranger's history that the first person he gassed to death in that state under his administration was somebody married to a Jew. And I really had a problem with that. And once I started researching and realizing that he was Jewish and he was against it all, I had to look into seeing why. And then I seen the interview that Candace Usman did with Sister Helen about the lethal injection. And then I seen how Brad's firing squad went. That's when I just completely went. And I told Abe, I said, I'll see you in DC. So here I am. So please never think, Rob, Jeff, and everybody else that's always on the visuals thinking what y'all do doesn't impact people. Exhibit A, how are you doing? Because I was the most stubborn, hardcore, you couldn't change my mind about anything whatsoever. And just because what y'all might be wondering about why I've had that take with that suffocation sign, my state claims to be the most pro-life state. They're anti-abortion, but they'll gas somebody to death in a heartbeat. And that's hypocritical. And I have a serious problem with that. And just keep doing what you're doing, because if my heart can be changed, you can get through to anybody. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you, Brandi.
Mhm.
Thank you, Brandi. Sacred space, sacred stories. Sacred space, sacred stories. So I left Denver after that dreadful news about my sister's murder. Went back to Detroit, got my family, drove to Cleveland, where our older sister, my grandfather, and I began to try to put our lives together after the news of Jennifer's murder. And right away, we were confronted with several realities. Who would care for little Imani, Jennifer's daughter, who was 2 years old? Who would be responsible for buying things like pull-ups, infant formula, food for the table, tuition for preschool, insurance premiums? So many other costs were on our minds. And each one of those costs represented for us a reality, a new reality that we had to confront, finding revenues to pay for all of that. And so, fortunately, funeral costs were covered by my grandfather, who wrote a check for it all, but that did not solve all of our issues. And so we had to move forward, and we did. But interestingly, we realized that Jennifer's murder, who has never been found, if that person had been found, would putting that person to death help us in any way? Would it restore Jennifer's life? Or would it restore our family? Would it help us to arrive at mythical closure? Would it ease our pain? No, we realized it would not. It would just continue the horrific cycle of death that claimed Jennifer's life in Cleveland. Preventable death would have been resumed if Jennifer's murderer had been caught and executed. And we could not invest in an industry of death, knowing that we want to cling so desperately to life and restoration and being able to move forward as a family. I'm so glad that by the grace of God working through so many people around us, we were able to move forward and experience that restoration. I'll tell you more later though. Bill Kissinger's here, a portrait of dedication. He took a Greyhound bus from Tallahassee to be with us tonight to tell us about yet another wrongful conviction, soon to be an exoneration. Bill, please come forward now and tell us more about your story. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. I want to start this off by saying that I don't want any punches pulled. Tell some of you today, I'm a former offender. I was locked up for 47 flat calendar years in Angola. Now, that differentiates me in one aspect and one aspect only. I've got a lot of dealing with the death penalty. Some of the people that are here tonight is new to them. It's not new to me at all. I have lived experience with it. I have legal experience with it. Now I have an outside experience with it. I've had a direct hand in the exoneration of 3 cases out of Louisiana. Since Gregg versus Georgia, Louisiana has exonerated 12 death sentenced men. The one common factor among all 12 of those is official misconduct. Official misconduct, whether it's prosecutorial, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's just jailhouse stuff. Official misconduct. Remember that. Now, there is, as he said, another case that's about to be exonerated. This case is horrible. It stems from a horrific crime, never happened. It never happened. There's a documentary that's going to be made called The Murder That Never Happened. Just last week, John Grisham, everybody's familiar with John Grisham? Noted Southern artist, an author who knows the ins and outs of the Southern criminal justice system like no one else, except me maybe. I'm sending him a list of tips soon. John just did an article, I think it's huge, calling for the immediate release of Jimmy Chris Duncan. Jimmy was accused of a horrific crime when the infant daughter of his girlfriend died of drowning. She had a seizure. She was in the bathtub and Jimmy was in the kitchen. He heard something, couldn't tell what it was, went back, and she was unresponsive. Now, it started out with simple questioning and getting the facts down and all of that. But what happened was, to make a long story short here, Jimmy was eventually charged with first-degree murder and was sentenced to death. What happened during his trial? What happened was 2 fully discredited doctors performed autopsies on him. These doctors were known throughout the South. John Grisham knew about them. They were known throughout the South for being a prosecutor's doctor. They would go anywhere and do anything and say anything that the prosecutor wanted them to say. Man, that's a good deal, huh? So they delivered on time what was needed. It was presented to the jury in such a way Jimmy couldn't combat it. I mean, how do you defeat the truth of a lie? It was almost impossible. So anyway, Jimmy was sentenced to death. He's been on death row for 30 2 years. Just in April of this year, a district court judge vacated his sentence and his conviction. That was huge. Now, what's happening? Why isn't Jimmy at home? He's not at home because the state waited till the very last day in the filing period and said, we appeal. Why are they doing this? They're doing it because they don't want to admit a mistake. Their claim is that, well, the doctors had a good reputation here. This science was valid when we tried him. It's no longer valid. But they're holding him and they're going to kill him based on junk science, discredited doctors, and the vengeance of a district attorney, an attorney general, and a governor that smell death every time they wake up. I'm sorry, that's just the way that it is. So if you have an opportunity, reach out, talk to other people about Jimmy Duncan's case. He's coming up for a bond hearing next week. A bond hearing. He has a chance to walk free. Of course, they're fighting it, but he can walk free. And let's hope that he does. I want to close this with a little short experience because the death penalty to everybody is a different thing. To me, it's deeply personal. I was, like I say, an inmate counsel on death row, and I developed friendships over the years. Dobie Gross Williams was a very good friend of mine. And Dobie asked the warden if I could spend his last 24 hours with him. And I didn't know how to take that, but I did. It started out by getting up early in the morning, 3 o'clock, walking through 13 gates and standing in front of Dobie's cell and not knowing what the hell to say, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to act. What do you do in a case like this? You know, do you laugh and joke and try to ease it? Do you rage? What do you do? And I did it, and we did it together until they weighed him, measured him, fingerprinted him, and carried him out the door. I cried for days, but it's the personal aspect of the death penalty to me. We've got to get rid of it. Stop the killing. Please stop the killing. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Sacred space, sacred stories. Sacred space, sacred stories. Well, I mentioned my grandfather paid for Jennifer's burial expenses, and we as a family rallied around and took care of little Imani's expenses as she grew up. But what if your family or a family cannot afford to cover those kinds of post-murder deaths? What do? You know, in my unscientific estimation, which is one way to say I'm not good at math, I estimated it'd be about $16 million in Ohio spent on executions, the machinery and the matrix of death, I call it, in Ohio. $16 million. And that's since Jennifer's murder 28 years ago. And I'm thinking that's a very underestimated actual cost. But have you ever asked the question, what would happen if those millions of dollars earmarked toward death would be reversed, redirected, and aimed at life, the preservation, the restoration of the victim families' lives who have expenses that are ongoing for years and years that cannot be met by state-sponsored homicide, state-sponsored death? What if we redirected those funds toward those families? I can tell you what would happen. We'd have families who have a greater opportunity to experience restoration and a sense of progress moving forward, knowing that the state has chosen to invest in their lives and not in the anger mill, the retribution mill, the revenge mill, which is the death penalty industrial complex. I call us to do what a rapper says in one of my favorite songs when it comes to this execution policy. And the rapper says very simply, reverse, 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 reverse. Reverse from the policies of execution and death and invest in the policies of life and restoration. I feel like preaching tonight. I have a collar on, you know, I could do this. But I do want to present two more of our colleagues who will come forward in this sacred space to tell sacred stories. Kimber Perotta and Dina Windle. They met here several years ago. The Fast and Vigil has a way of bringing people together, right? They met here in this sacred space several years ago. And we're excited that they're both here tonight, particularly Dina, who is going to complete her first full Fast and Vigil, I believe. Is that right? Second full Fast and Vigil. Amen. The two of them are like sisters. And tonight they're going to share, well, unfortunate stories, stories that are nevertheless sacred for us to hear tonight. Kimberly and Dina, will you come forward and tell your stories? Dina, you can wait. Okay.
Dina,
Kimberly will go first.
Thank you. My name is Kimber Perotta, and I live in a little town called East Hampton, Connecticut. And I have been an abolitionist since I was a child. But I really got involved back in 2013 when a friend of mine started a prayer ministry for people on death row. So I had a list of people I was assigned to pray for. And as I was praying for them, I felt a really strong calling from God to write to one of them. His name was Jose Villegas, who was on death row in Texas. And I spoke to my husband about it. And at the time, he wasn't feeling quite sure about that. And the feeling just wouldn't go away. And eventually, he agreed that if I got a P.O. box, I could write. So I did. And as the days went on, I thought, well, I should really write to all of these people because I'm praying for them and I want to know them and know what to pray for and know who they are as human beings. So I wrote to all of them. And Jose was executed. And I heard back from every single one of them except him. And I thought, well, that's weird. I must have made that up. I must be crazy. I don't know. A month or two went by and I went to my P.O. box and I pulled out a letter from someone I didn't know, someone I had never heard of. And it scared me a little bit. I thought, who is this person and how did they get my address? Are they passing my information around in there? And I opened it and it was from a man named Moises Mendoza on death row in Texas. And his letter said that Jose was one of his good friends. And he really appreciated my letter, but he had too much going on at the time to write back. So he asked Moy to write back for him. And when I read that, I knew instantly that God wasn't calling me to write to Jose. He was calling me to do that to connect me with Moy, who I never would have connected with otherwise. Moy and I had a pretty instant connection. He was born just a few months before me. We were the exact same age, and we had a lot in common. And we developed a truly beautiful 11-year friendship. He was guilty of the crime he committed when he was 20 years old, but he had tremendous remorse. And it truly was an awful crime. I do want to honor Rochelle and her family, the woman that he killed and everything that they went through. But 21 years later, he was a completely different person. He was genuine and honest and trustworthy. I would have trusted him in my living room. He, at first, wanted nothing to do with conversations about faith, but Over time, when I started struggling with my faith, he did find Christ and he was baptized in prison and he was living on the faith-based unit and he started helping me. He was selfless. If I offered to send him something, he always said, no, I have enough. I have plenty. Send it to someone else who needs it. He was an incredible human being. I was able to develop a friendship with his wife over video chat. And when someone's been on death row for 21 years, you start to think maybe this is never going to happen. But at the end of last year, we got the news that he had a date. And his wife set up a group chat for all of his friends and family to be there for one another. And what ensued over the next few months was truly one of the most traumatic things I've ever experienced in my life. The most traumatic thing, I will say. I had to watch his wife plan his funeral when he was very much alive and healthy 41-year-old. My husband and I were in Aruba the week before his execution. It was a vacation we had planned before we knew. And my husband said, do you want to cancel it? Do you want to reschedule it? And I said, no, because these things change all the time. The date could change. We'll keep it. And of course, the date did not change. And it was an amazing trip. But it was really hard for me to fully relax and enjoy myself because all I could think about was what was coming the next week. I had so much anxiety over it. But on that trip, there were so many what Moy liked to call God moments. And the last few months of his life, he talked a lot about all these God moments he was having that just let him know that God was real and God was with him. And we all had a lot of those, but I had several on that trip. One of which my husband and I got up in the morning to drive to a beach on the other side of the island. And we drove past a building that said Moises in huge letters on the side of it. It's not a super common name. And I was like, that's God. God is with him. I got his last letter on that trip and I had to read it sobbing in the hotel room and write back to him. And the second I knew that he had a date, I knew I was going. I knew I had to be there. And I told him I was coming, that I had to stand outside and say this isn't right. I wasn't on his visitors list only because he had such a vast network of family and friends that would visit him all the time. I didn't want to take a space from one of them living so far away. So I thought when I told him, he was going to say, don't bother, save your money, stay home, because he didn't really want protests or petitions, not because he didn't want to live, he did want to live, but because he just felt like it wasn't going to change things. But when I told him, he just said, thank you so much. It means so much to me that you're coming. And I was surprised at the time, but now I understand it because he was so much wiser than me. So the next week I did go down to Texas and I went right to the hospitality house where his family was. And it was there that they got all their last phone calls from him. They were truly amazing to me. They welcomed me with open arms. They included me. I thought I would maybe get to talk to him once. And they called me again, like, come on, he wants to talk to you. And I said, no, you're his family. You talk to him. And they said, no, they were so amazing to me. But being in that hospitality house was, I can't even describe the level of trauma. And his wife describes it as like a lot of little mini traumas that add up to one huge trauma, and it's true. His wife, and I believe it was a close friend of his, I may be misspeaking, but they shared that at their very last visit with him, all of a sudden the guards came in and they were like, he has to go now. He has to go right now. You got to get out of here. And they were like, okay, let us say goodbye. And they wouldn't let them. They were like, he's got to go now. And hearing that was one trauma. I had to watch his family having their last conversations with him and watch their emotions and hear them screaming things like it's not enough time. I had to watch his wife holding his wedding ring saying, should I keep this or should I put it back on his finger? They went to witness the execution and I went to the vigil outside. Julie Rinker, she was truly amazing. She changed her travel plans to be there with me and make sure I wouldn't be alone. And I stood outside and had to watch his family, who is now my family and will be for the rest of my life, go into that building. And I had to watch them walk back out knowing he was gone. And in Texas afterwards, they take the body and they bring it to a chapel. So I went with his family, and I can't describe that trauma either. I mean, I had to watch his family touching him for the first time in 21 years, and he was no longer alive. I had to watch his wife with his body. I mean, his skin was still soft. It was so traumatic. It was so traumatic. And I've always known that the death penalty creates more victims, but being there is a whole nother level of understanding. I just kept looking around like I was in a movie. Like, is this real? Do they know what they're doing to these people? The next day I shut down. I had a few of you amazing people reaching out to me like, I'm here if you want to talk. And I said, I can't talk about this. I don't even want to think about it. But over the next few days, the grief just started coming in waves. And I was able to stay a few more days. His wife and his spiritual advisor took me to where he grew up. They showed me the house he grew up in their town. It was amazing. And I was able to go to his memorial service, where I looked around, I lost count. There were over 50 people there, which for someone who was on death row for 21 years is amazing. And so many people got up to talk about him. And I mean, he was the kind of person that was recording himself reading stories for his nieces and nephews so that they could have him reading to them as they grew up. He made a box of notes for one of his best friends so that she could pull one out every day after he died and read it. He was just the embodiment of love. And getting home was a whole nother ball game. I learned that this is a very isolating kind of grief. Nobody understands unless they've been through it themselves. Like I said, I had, Scott was amazing. Allie was amazing. Julie was amazing. I had Abe reach out to me, Jane. Everybody was amazing from this group, and I'm so glad I had you. But at home, nobody even said I'm sorry. Nobody even, I don't want to say nobody. But I know if I had a friend pass away at home, people would have been checking in on me, and nobody was. And truly, he had become one of my best friends in this world. And it was like nobody cared. And I don't know if it's because they didn't understand how close he was to me, or they didn't understand, they just didn't know what to say, or if it was because they valued his life less because he was on death row. But it was very isolating. And in that moment, I realized that that's why Moy was happy I was coming, because he knew that we were all going to need each other in the days after. And it's true. And, we've all been able to keep in touch with each other and support each other through our grief. And before I wrap up, I just want to, hold on, I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay. I just want to play, I had a different recording I was going to play, but it's pretty personal to the family. So I'm going to play another one, but I just want you to hear his voice. I want you to hear a message he had for all of you. And so many times people who are disconnected from this, they think that people on death row are the worst of the worst, that they're monsters. And I want you to listen to this and realize it's not true. Moy wasn't the worst of the worst. He was the best of the best. And I just want you to hear from him. So give me a second to turn the volume up. All right, hold on. All right, I'm gonna try to hold this by the speaker. Okay. That's who Moy was. His last words on this earth were always love, love, love. And I got that tattooed in his handwriting right here. So I'll always be able to look down and remind myself to live a life that's worthy of that. And the very last thing that I'll share is that the recording I was originally going to play, which was his last phone call with his family, at the very end, he said, "If you see a hummingbird, you know that's me." And he truly has been sending a lot of signs to all of us, many of which have been bird related. And on Monday, I had been sitting out here for 2 hours, and I got up to walk into the building to get my phone and to take a bathroom break. And as I walked up to the building, a flock of blue jays, blue was his favorite color, surrounded me. I've never seen so many blue jays together. I lifted up my glasses to make sure they were really blue, and they were, and one landed on the railing and stared right at me. And then today, after I rang the bell for him this morning, I was over there talking to Terry, and I was looking at her ears, and I said, "Are those hummingbird earrings?" She said, "Yeah." She told me that she got them at a conference that they were made by, I think it was women that have been trafficked, she said. And she said, "I bought a second pair that I wanted to save for somebody who needed it." She said, "I think you were my need." And I had to send that to his family, and one of them said, "Are you serious? Like, he's still giving the best gifts even from heaven. How does he do that?" And those signs just let me know that he's here. I told him about this event every year for the 7 years I've been coming. And now I know that he's here. He's here with us. He sees what we're doing. And he's so thankful for it, because I know he doesn't want any family to ever go through what his family had to go through. So thank you guys all for being here.
Kimber, I don't usually cry at these things. But you got me. Thank you. We love you.
Me too.
You're still on my phone as Kimber from Connecticut. I keep having to look up your last name. Not anymore, but for a long time. Please welcome Dina Windle.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to cry a lot. Just right off the bat, I'm telling you that. This is hard. It's been 20 years. Still hard. I can't remember what I had for breakfast a week ago, but I can remember November of '92. I can remember April of 2019. Because it started like this. You may think I'm super young, but I was super, super young. When this occurred, I was a second-year law student, University of Arkansas, Little Rock. Go Pigs. I was going home that night because I took classes at night. I had to support myself and work full-time during the day. I lived in this house and I shared it with this woman in North Little Rock. And she got up really early in the morning, and I did not want to get up early in the morning. So I used to park my car in front of the house so she could have the driveway, which was at an incline. And one night as I got home, normal, as a city girl, I knew not to talk to strangers. I knew it's dark outside, take care of myself. That night, this man pulled up next to my car. Beautiful neighborhood, residential, picket fences, all that good stuff. And he pulled up next to me and he said, "Do you know how to get to these apartments?" I had lived in this house for 2 months, never had lived there prior. And he looked confused. I said, "You go down the street, you take a left." I was so happy that I could help him that I knew actually where this place was. So I turned, I had my backpack. It was constitutional law, federal taxation night. And for anyone who's been a law student, those are heavy books. And it's not just one, it's multiple books. Some in my arms, some in my backpack. As I walked away, going up the driveway, it's like now it begins to be the bad horror movie that you scream at the girl while you're watching TV and saying, "Run." I had that feeling inside of me that something was going down. So I dropped my books and I started running up the driveway. And as soon as I got any speed going, I felt that arm come across my body. I felt either a knife or a gun at my back. This man was 6'2". I'm still about the same height, same weight as I was in law school. He was easily 200 pounds. And he said to me, as I let out the scream that sounded very horrifying, once again, a bad rated movie, a B-rated movie, that it sounded like the whole world heard this one scream, and yet no one looked out the window. No one heard it, not even my roommate who was in the house. And he said, don't do that again, because I'll kill you. Learn my lesson. And he said, you're coming with me. So as he took me and shoved me into the driver's seat, in my head, I was thinking, my mother's going to kill me, right? So irrational. My mom is going to kill me if I don't make it home safe. So we started driving away, and I know statistics say that the further away you get from your house, the least likely chance you have of coming back home alive. I knew this. So I started in my mind saying, okay, take a left on this street, take a right. I don't know the name of it, but I can see the corner deli or whatever it was. We started going further and further away to a place that I had never been. He took me behind a strip mall. I felt my body, my head separating from my body as the assault occurred on me. Because that's the only way that I felt I could survive and not know the terror, the horror that was happening to my physical body personally. And it's the only thing that I could figure that would mentally save my life. So as he was done what he was doing, he decided that he needed money out of my ATM. But little did he know that a law school student has no money whatsoever in your bank account. I had a total of $100. Took the $100, and then the next machine we went to shut him down because it laughed at him. There was no money. So then we continued to drive further away. And he said something strange to me that stuck out. He said, you know, I can put you at a place that's warm, or I can put you outside. What's your choice? So in my mind, I'm thinking about my mom. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I think I'm going to die. And in my mind, I'm thinking, if I go somewhere cold, the weather conditions are going to get me, and my body's going to decompose much faster. And animals might eat at my body. Opposite was warm. If I'm in a warm place, irrationally thought, well, he's got friends who are rapists as well, and they'll probably come by and all rape me. But my body will stay more composed than it does outside, and then my mother can find my body and she can give me a burial. I wasn't from Arkansas. I'd never visited except for law school. My mom was New England. No one knew where I was because I had yet to come home that night from school, so no one was missing me. I said to him, put me to a warm place. We drove to an abandoned house that was boarded up. And I had lied to him. I've always worn glasses, but it was for distance. And I said to him, you know, I can't see without my glasses. Slapped me in the face. My glasses went flying. And he said, you're not wearing those again. So we went into this abandoned house, tied me up, hands, feet, put me in the closet, and hammered it with wood closed so that I wouldn't escape. Before he left, he said, I'm coming back for you. And I believed it. Heard his car leave because it had a bad muffler and you can hear those things. Untied myself. Then I thought I heard him coming back. I retied myself because I was really afraid that he would find me untied before I had a chance to escape. So I knew I was escaping. Finally, I did my step when I thought I heard him away. Escaped the closet only after numerous times of hitting my body over and over against this door that would not open, and finally opened. Wood gave way. I got up and I said, now what? Is he outside waiting for me like a bad horror movie? Is he behind a bush waiting for me? Are his friends waiting for me? So I crawled outside, hid underneath the bush, because I can, because I was that small. And then I looked up and saw a police car with the lights, and the alarm was going off. And I ran to that car like it was the Olympics that year, and I would have won. It didn't end there, because then came, if you ever are a rape victim, you visit the hospital and they violate your body all over again to get that wonderful evidence that they need to get this person. It was Thanksgiving, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and I couldn't go home because the police department said, we haven't caught him yet, so we'd really like you to stay here so that if we do catch him, you can see him in a lineup and pick him out for us. I did a composite of the man. Numerous police agencies had concluded that there were 3 of us. I was victim 2. Victim 1 was shot and killed. I got away. Victim 3 was released. Marcel Wayne Williams was caught about a month later. Let's fast forward. They do my trial first because man, I was a great eyewitness. I was able to put this composite together, and there was medical DNA. I'm from the Northeast. My parents are hippies, Peace Corps people. I was brought up not believing in the death penalty. Come from the East Coast, we don't even know what the death penalty is. So we made a plea bargain that Marcel would plead guilty to my case, but not see death. Obviously, in my case, it was not possible to see death, but his case would not be used in legal terms as a mitigator. So they couldn't use it on I wanted to do my time there, do my law school, and get out of Arkansas, because obviously the experience, post-traumatic stress, was way too much. Move forward. Adios. My daughter, who's 7 years old at the time, says, "Mom, why don't we go to church?" And I look at her. She believes there's a God out there. Find a church that we're comfortable with. Many years pass, and I take Jesus in, but I'm still a very angry person. Angry. I have no idea why I'm angry, but it's just it gets me. Whatever situation I'm in, whatever little thing, I get that anger, and I can't figure out why I'm so angry. One day I get this automated phone call. I love the automated phone calls. It's the Varna unit. That's where your people go who are next in line to be executed, the Varna unit. Inmate number, Marcel, they don't even give you his name. It's just inmate number. He's up for execution. I look to my husband, who I'm married to, and I say, "What is execution, and why do we still do it? Is that crazy? You have the right to come and speak against this man and actually ask for his execution. I know you want to do that, and here's the phone number for the prosecuting attorney's office." I was horrified that as a victim, I would be on point to execute another human being. So what I did, because I'm a little stubborn, and what I did because I worked for the public defender's office in New Jersey, is that I contacted his attorney in Arkansas. They vetted me, and they're like, "This one's a crazy one, but we know her name. She's victim 2. But why would she call and ask to speak at his clemency for him to live? Why would she do that?" They flew over their team, two of them, the attorney and the investigator, who we're still close friends with. And they're like, "Tell us your story. Why do you want to do this? But we can't tell you what to say. We can't even suggest what you say. because we don't want it to look like you're in collusion with us. Paid my own way to Arkansas, 2019. Had not seen Marcel since my trial with him. I was the last person to testify. I was the second person only live. The rest were video recorded. Now you ask, why was Arkansas so gung-ho about executing someone that year? Not just someone. That was known as the conveyor belt of death that year. Because they had lined up, and I always get the number wrong, and I know Abe's going to tell me, 8 to 10, 8, thank you. 8 people that year that it was historic, back to back as you possibly could get in executions, because the drugs that they were using were expiring at the prison. So what do we do with expired drugs? We line them up, and that's what Arkansas did. The people that they decided to execute wasn't one in order or didn't make any sense. It was, I truly think, the ones that no one cared about. See, Marcel didn't have a family. They had a family, but they weren't really there supporting him. So this clemency hearing that I get to go through in the morning, and they pat you down, and mind you, I'm used to this because I go to state prisons all the time in New Jersey. Pat you down, do all the checks on you, decide my skirt was a little too short, so they yank it down on you. They make you feel like a human being if you're siding with the defendant. I go in, I haven't seen Marcel in 20 years. I look at him. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew that I didn't want him executed. I look at him, still that face that I remember. He had gained a lot of weight, a lot of weight. He wouldn't look at me, not at all, because he didn't even know what I was going to say. Sat down, last person to testify, and I looked up, and I looked at him, and I said, Marcel Williams. And when you hear your name, you look up and look at the person that's saying it. He looked right at me. I looked at him, started crying. I said, Marcel, I forgive you. You see, when I started this Christian walk, I knew that Jesus Christ had forgiven me for every single sin that I had done in my life. And just because I didn't murder someone doesn't mean that I had committed sins against God. Also taught me that as soon as I forgave this man, 20 years of anger rolled off my back. 20 years of anyone who I had something against rolled off my back. So while the state promised me closure, that closure was going to be the execution of this man, and that would make me feel so much better, the closure really was the forgiveness of this man who had done this act to me. What I found out that this man grew up with a mom who couldn't really take care of herself, never mind her children. She was an alcoholic. She fed her substance abuse by pimping out her only son to men, women, so she could get that money to feed her habit. He was the oldest one, and the only thing that he knew to do was to steal so that they could get food in the house because mom couldn't provide that for him. Only thing he knew was to steal and sell it again. The only thing he knew was the violence that was perpetrated on him while he was incarcerated as a juvenile, while his mother pimped him out, and also while he was raped while he was incarcerated. That was Marcel's life. No one had ever forgiven him. So that's what I bring to the table, is forgiveness. That's how I live. Jesus tells you, someone asked Jesus, how many times should you forgive Jesus? And Jesus says 77 times 7. That wasn't an exact number. That was Jesus telling you to forgive over and over and over again. Because Jesus paid that price for me, and he had forgiven me. And so that's what I learned from all this. Yeah, it's a horrible story about someone who got killed, who's someone who did his worst act on a human being. But it's a story of redemption for me.
that in my forgiveness, I was able to live again. So again, while the justice system tells you that killing another human being will feel better, that vengeance will feel better, that hate will drive your life, I say it's forgiveness that makes me live. It's the forgiveness that I live with. And I know, because I found out after the fact that Marcel was saved, I'll see him again up there. But in the meantime, I know that I am forgiven, and as well as he is forgiven. I thank you for your time. I thank my Journey of Hope people for always supporting me. Thank you. How did I come here? This crazy man. It was the blow up of Facebook media in 2019. I was interviewed by this wonderful woman. Next minute, I get this phone call. This happened in April, mind you, 2019. I get this phone call from this weird man named Abe Bonowitz. No idea how this man got my private number. Still don't know to this day. And he says, hey, I've got this thing going on in end of June, July, where a bunch of people tell this story. I want you to come. I think it's going to help you heal. I think you're going to find your people. Because it's not a dinner table conversation you have with everyone. And so I told my husband, and he goes, you know what, Dean? I know that you're smart, not just up here, but inside instinctively. I made a deal with him that year. I'm going for one day, because if the guy is nuts, I'm out. So I only made arrangements for one day. No lie. He was right here talking. I pulled up right here. So my first time to DC ever. And I yell out the window because I did my research. I've seen what he looks like. Hey, Abe, it's Dina. And Abe goes, so glad you're here. Find a parking spot. Dear Lord, opened up one right there next to the Methodist building. I jumped out. I told my story for the first time. I bawled my eyes out. This man right here, Jack Sullivan, don't know if you remember, after the talk, came up to me, gave me this big hug, gave me this big fat wad of Kleenex. And then came behind him, this big man named Bill Pelkey. Gave me this big old bear hug next to this guy right here, George. A year later, had another stranger, Bob Gross, who's not here. He says, hey, what do you feel about joining this group called the Journey of Hope? And I said, hey, I'm in. And that's how I got here. Thank you.
Love you, brother. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Kimber. Sacred space, sacred stories. Sacred space, sacred stories. Now, maybe you're asking me, how can you, Jack Sullivan Jr., call this space in front of the United States Supreme Court sacred, given all the outrageous decisions that are handed down by this court and previous courts? Well, I claim this space is sacred space, not because of who they have been, who they are, but because of who we are. I'm sorry? And what we bring every time we come to this space. We bring resistance to violence, rejection of hate.
Okay, there you go.
And we insist that life be honored, that human dignity be treasured.
Where does this?
And that we say no to death. This is who we are. And we take these messages wherever we happen to be. And I'm happy that we are in front of this Supreme Court at this particular time to make our bold claims of life over death, and to say, along with Journey of Hope members, past and present, that we speak to the governments around us and decision makers before us, don't kill in our names. Do not kill in our names. If you want to honor our loved ones and honor us, invest in life. Invest in life. This is who we are. And I'm so glad that because of who we are, as imperfect as we are, we're able to speak and live words of hope and healing, joy and justice, life and love for such a time as this. This is why our stories matter. Our presence matters. And we are making differences wherever we happen to go. And I'm so glad to share this space with all of you tonight. Corley is with us tonight. She has volunteered with Death in the Action several years ago. She too has now experienced the killing of a friend on death row. Jane, come to us now and tell us your story.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jack. This is not going to be a polished delivery because I've never actually really talked to people about this. Because guess what? Your family doesn't want to hear about it. Nobody wants to hear about what you experience when you have a friend die. But I had a friend who died. So the way how this got started was I was in Oklahoma City with Abe and Allie and Jeff, or the Reverend Doctor. And I had been up there for the Richard Glossop deal. And that was, we found out that he was going to get a break, and we were all so ecstatic. It was nuts. And through as I was heading back and getting ready to come back to Dallas, I live in Dallas, I'm a lawyer in Dallas. So as I was coming back, I thought, you know, I need to write to one of these guys. And so I ran into a mutual acquaintance who told me that who knows everybody on the row in Oklahoma. And I asked her, who's not getting visits? And she said, Emmanuel Littlejohn. So I urge you please to take your phones out and write in Emmanuel Littlejohn. Please do this now. Emmanuel, like it sounds, and Littlejohn, one word, to see an image of him, because I want you to see this guy. And so I wrote him a couple of times and said, hey, you want to visit? And he said, well, I guess, yeah, sure. So anyway, went up to visit him, and through the fact that the Reverend Doctor had introduced me to him, I had he knew to trust me, so I came up and visited him, and I visited him for over the course of about 2 years. He was got several dates, and as you can imagine, the trauma that comes with getting repeat dates where they say they're going to kill you is really traumatic. So it's really traumatic for him. And not long after that, I had talked to him about this, and he had admitted to me that he had not been visited by his family at all for quite some time. His mother lived in Wichita, Kansas, and even though that wasn't a great big stretch away, she was infirm, and the family wasn't oriented towards seeing him. So he told them, well, this stranger comes up from Dallas to see me. I think you guys can too. And that was Emmanuel. So, or we called him Emmanuel. Anyway, Little John was a remarkably warm person, and also very considerate, highly considerate person. He had, every time I got a letter from him, we started off being pen pals, but he was much better one-on-one visiting him. He was an OG gangster, just a total nut. And his family was all OG gangsters. But soon after that, his mom started visiting him. He started to kind of perk up. I don't know, but he always maintained his innocence. And the remarkable thing about this situation was he had been accused in a convenience store robbery gone bad. The shooter was another guy who was tried before him. The state of Oklahoma used its premise that the guy who was the shooter was this other guy. Then they turn around and say, okay, Little John, we're going to try you. And now our theory is you're the shooter. You're the shooter. He no more shot anybody than flew to the moon. Anyway, but this is a guy who, when he wrote to me and when he talked to me, was always, how's your family? How's your husband? How are your kids? You know, always about that. He had a friend in France that he maintained a relationship with, and when her mother died, it just about did him in. He was just so heartfelt about people. And he maintained his innocence. We've talked about this many times. And he was always very much of the opinion, you know, that, well, it's, you know, they're going to do it to me. You know, they're trying to kill me. But it wasn't until he really got a date in September of 23 that he started to say, heck no, you shouldn't kill me. And in fact, the clemency people gave him a 3-2 verdict in his favor. He got clemency, but unfortunately, our governor in Oklahoma just denied that clemency, and he was still set up to go die on September 26th, 23. Remarkably, Little John asked me to be at his demise. And it was going to be me and his mother and his daughter. And I did not realize that he had held me in such esteem that he would want me to be there, but he did. It was amazing. And what I really want to do is honor this guy today and give you a taste of how human and how unbelievably sweet these people are. Like others have said, these people aren't, you know, horrible rogues. This is just a big old diabetic goofball who would, when I'd go visit him, would have me buy him multiple snacks, which he would put in a legal folder so that he could take them back to the unit and sell them for like big money. That was his stream of income. He's hustled in phones, and then he got, you know, punished for that, and then he'd hustle in another phone. He was always talking to people. But when they were getting ready to execute him, we're in this extremely surreal set of like bleachers facing the window that they take and pull like a shade on to let you see what's going on. And here's Little John saying, he's in tears, he's received the injections, he's going down, and he calls to his mom, says, Mom, you okay? And she says she's okay. She says, Dina, you okay? That's his daughter. And she says she's okay. And then he tells them, I'm okay too. And those were his last words. He's a remarkable individual, and the fact that we don't have him anymore in this world is just a shame. Anyway, I appreciate y'all. I'm honored to be before you. You all have gone through these things for a jillion years. I've only been doing this for a couple of years, but anyway, writing. Oh, one more thing I want to just point out. I never talked to Manuel about this, but he was a pretty unassuming guy and you know, not terribly sophisticated. I have another death row pen pal in Texas whom Allie has met and is a remarkable person. And I talked to him about Little John's death. And he told that individual that I still correspond with said that it took him a solid year before he thought that I probably wasn't working for the state. I mean, that I was part of the enemy. And I don't know if that ever happened with Little John, but it's like, how can they think anything else? You've got somebody who's driving from Dallas, Texas to come see him. What's up with that? Anyway, so I don't think I ever really got that from Daniel, but he was a remarkable person, and I really miss him. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jane. Say it with me. Sacred space, sacred stories. Sacred space, sacred stories. Haven't these stories been marvelous to hear tonight, challenging to hear tonight, uplifting to hear tonight, disturbing to hear at night? I've been preaching for 40 years, and when I leave the pulpit and march down the aisle and at the front door, and people come by on the way out, they say much the same thing across the country. Thank you for your sermon. I enjoyed your sermon. And I appreciate those comments. But what I want to hear, and I seldom hear it, but sometimes I do, is what they heard as the call to action in the message. What did they feel compelled to do? Did I entertain them, or did I challenge them, along with myself, to go out into the world and be a difference maker, a transformer, a policy changer? Well, I hope tonight you have heard multiple calls to action, to continue being difference makers, policy changers, people who stand up to challenge violence in all of its phases and places, unjust laws, unjust practices, and investments in death, that the death penalty is. And therefore say, we believe in life. And to say what Bill Pelkey would always say about the purpose of Winning Hope, that is to assert that the answer is love and compassion for all of humankind. The answer is love and compassion for all of humankind, not violence, not revenge, not retribution, not retaliation, but love and compassion for all of humankind. Say it, love and compassion for all of humankind. Amen. Amen. I think something special happens when you put on a religious outfit. Today I went to lunch with a friend of mine, had on my collar and got a free refill on my drink. Was it the collar? I don't know. He got one too. He got a collar on himself. I don't know. But I do believe that it's not so much the outfit that a person is wearing, but it's who the person is on the inside of that outfit. You know, many people think that the church's main purpose is to get people into heaven. Well, I think that's their purpose. I think the real purpose is to get heaven into people. Our next speaker gets heaven into people.
Oh, shit.
At their most vulnerable moment in their lives, when they are facing a time of transition from this earthly plane through the intentional efforts of those in prisons to a spiritual heavenly realm when they will rest in the arms of God throughout eternity. He reminds them that regardless of what they may have done, or at least been convicted of doing, they are children of God, valuable. And that the image of God is still imprinted on their faces. They are loved, they are not disposable, they are loved by God. And he reminds them of that. He gives heaven to these people at their most sacred, vulnerable moment in their lives. Therefore, I call him lovingly and accurately the pastor and priest of our movement, Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood.
Ah, shit. Damn, that's too much. Don't move. I want everybody to know, Jack Sullivan endorsed my first book in 2015, and he's done a good job of lying about me ever since.
Love you, man.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Jack. Well, good evening. And hot as shit today. I got it. I wanted y'all to know I got some shorts on underneath this. If anybody was wondering. Well, I was thinking about what I should say sitting back there. You know, we've heard some really beautiful stories. I was very touched about hearing about Moy, very touched about just all of these spaces of beauty, where it seems like the heavens open up and something amazing happens. I think the difficulty for me in the place that I currently exist in is that I've got a lot of nightmares. And probably I got more nightmares than I do good stories at this point. A couple of weeks ago, I saw my 10th guy executed. Anthony Wainwright in Florida. I sat there and I took his questions. Why? Why didn't as many people show up for me as showed up for Julius Jones? Why? Why ain't there people out here banging on the walls trying to keep this from happening? Why? The difficult questions. Those are very difficult questions. I've been doing this work for 15, 16 years now. My kids have grown up with this work. Brandi, you know what I'm talking about. Your kids start asking questions that kids shouldn't be asking. So to be honest, and you know, I'm in everything if not honest. Sometimes I get tired of talking about this shit. I do. It's a lie, isn't it? I mean, do y'all feel that? God. I mean, I think about, I was talking to, I did an interview before I came out here this afternoon, and they said, they said, you know, what's it like dealing with this? And I said, I have nightmares all the time. All the time. And he said, what are those nightmares like? Quite the question. A lot of audacity to ask such a question, right? And I said, you know, of all of my guys, at least a couple of times a week, I go into the execution chamber to be there with one of these guys who have asked me to accompany them in the final seconds of their life. And I go in and I see one of my guys laying on the gurney and looking at me and saying, Jeff, why didn't you help me? You sat there and you watched them kill me. Why didn't you help me? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, on a very practical level, I can say, well, I didn't help because I want to be there for the next guy. I'm not trying to go to prison. They would tackle me. I could say all of those things. But it doesn't take away the guilt that I feel every single time. The question that was asked today, that's often asked over and over again, well, why do you keep on doing it? Hell, I don't know. I'm crazy. I mean, I do take, psychotropic drugs every morning, but certified. But why? Why do we keep on doing this? Why do we keep on putting ourselves through this? Why in the hell are we out here on the sidewalks, hot as hell, with people driving by going, what the hell are those crazy folks doing out here? I love these sightseeing buses coming by. I don't know. I do know that I often, y'all forgive me, I'm a Southern priest, a Southern preacher, I'm going to get a little scripture in here, so y'all forgive me. I'm going to slide it in. I'm going to make you think it's not even scripture. But there's this story of the woman caught in adultery, where in the story lies this beautiful phrase, you who are without sin, cast the first stone. People love to rush to that statement in the story. But Jesus, when he finds this woman who is caught in adultery at the time was a capital offense. And of course, the very first question that any good preacher has to ask is, where's the man?
Yeah.
Where's the man? So I'll make sure I get that in there. But I also know that there's a little space between Jesus arriving to this execution and this beautiful phrasing, you who are without sin, cast the first stone. And there's inside the passage, it says that Jesus was writing in the dirt. The woman was thrown in the dirt and Jesus was writing in the dirt, which means that Jesus was in the dirt with the woman. And if the stones had started flying, Jesus was prepared to die with the woman. I feel like the call of my life has been to get in the dirt. But when you get in the dirt, you get dirty. Sometimes you get jaded. Sometimes it gets hard. Sometimes you see things that you don't necessarily want to see. Sometimes it's hard for me to listen to some of the beautiful stories, because sometimes the beautiful stories remind me of the ugly stories that I've experienced. But it seems like when we give our lives to those who are marginalized and oppressed, we see beauty and we see ugliness. That's the nature of the work, right? I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the execution of Kenny Smith. Kenny was on death row in Alabama when he was chosen to be the first victim of a nitrogen hypoxia execution. And I remember when Kenny reached out to me, it was a lot. It was a whole lot. And the reason why it was a whole lot is because the state of Alabama asked me to sign a release saying that it was very possible that this experience could kill me, that nitrogen could leak into the chamber and that it could kill me. And I was thinking to myself, damn, if Alabama is going to get you to sign a release, I mean, Alabama don't do anything right, and they want you to sign a release. And of course, at this point, they had botched like 3 of the previous like 5 executions. But Kenny asked me to be with him, and I mean, shit, I couldn't say no. Now, my wife could have. She could have. It was a very long conversation, but she could have. And, you know, I just remember praying, trying to decide if that was something that I needed to do. And I kept on remembering that story I told y'all earlier about getting dirty and getting in the dirt. But when you start talking about dying, getting dirty, dying doing this shit, I mean, that's another level.
Yeah.
That's more than just a t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
Shit. So I talked to Kenny, told him I would. I told him I would be there with him. And, you know, we began to develop a friendship. Now, we weren't homeboys like, you know, some of the folks who talk today. I mean, we weren't super tight like that. We had our disagreements. Of the 10, there's been some that have been my best friend, and there's been others that have said, I want you to be there, and I want you to tolerate me. And that's what I've done. But with Kenny, we got to be closer and closer. And I remember right around Christmas time, we decided to file a lawsuit to sue the state of Alabama to try to get them to provide us with safety requirements, safety, minimum safety standards. Like one of the things we asked for was a way to get out. 2, what do the oxygen monitors that you're going to have all over the chamber sound like? I didn't even know what they sound like. They could shout out, everything's okay, just stay where you are. Had no idea. And so we sued them, and immediately the state of Alabama, and another great shock to me, gave us every single thing that we asked for. That was how bad they wanted to be the first to try nitrogen execution. I mean, shit, I thought I should have asked for a lot more. I mean, I didn't even, but anyways, you can't go back. So we get closer and closer to the date. And I remember being at Christmas, and we had already told the kids like what was going on. And I remember looking at Philip. Philip's one of my 12-year-olds. We have twins that are 12, an 11-year-old, and twins that are 10. That's too many damn kids. You're right about that. But Philip came up to me and he said, are you going to be with us next Christmas? Are you going to be with us next Christmas? I mean, I didn't sign up for that shit. I mean, when I went to seminary, they didn't give you a class on how to deal with all this stuff.
It's true.
But of course, I told him, yeah. We get closer and closer to the date, and Kenny begins to ask questions like, what does it feel like to suffocate to death? Shit, I don't know. I have no idea. But we did some Googling, and we started talking about it and these types of things. And the closer we got, the more it became very clear how awful it was going to be. A couple days out, I remember thinking, there is no way they're actually going to do this. I mean, even at the end, and I know that's crazy. We're talking about Alabama. But even at the end, I was going, there is no way they're actually going to do this. I had no idea what this thing looked like. I had no idea what, any of it, how it worked or anything. So eventually we get there on the last day. And I'm sitting there with Kenny in the visitation room. And he asked me, he said, if I start choking to death, are you going to rip that thing off my face? Damn.
Yeah.
Are you going to rip that thing off my face? I knew the answer. I knew there was, if I wanted to see my kids again, I knew there was no way. I still feel guilty, very guilty for answering like that. I feel dishonest. But, what was I supposed to say? We get to the very end of the visit. His family leaves. They're ripping his wife and his kids out of his arms, screaming, and the guards are coming in. I mean, it's absolutely horrific. And we finally go back, and I'm walking back to the cell where he is next to the chamber. And there's oxygen monitors everywhere. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of oxygen monitors. And I don't even know what the damn things sound like. But I was definitely reading each of them to see what was going on. But we keep going. They take Kenny back. They strap him down. I go in for the first time. And Kenny was a funny guy. He had a really great sense of humor, and it was very helpful. But I go in, and he's got on a mask that goes from his hairline all the way underneath his chin. And I got close, and he's waving me in. He goes something like, I bet you didn't think this shit was going to look like Darth Vader, did you? I was very thankful for that, because it definitely lightened the moment. I began to read scripture with him, but it's that Darth Vader, like, and we began to pray together, read scripture together, and the guards are lined up on the walls. This was the highlight of their career. I mean, they are all very excited that this is about to happen. I think there was 16 of them in a very, very small place. I stepped back, and they bring me out, and then they bring me back in. And when I go back in, it's the warden, the regional director, 2 guards, and me. We know that the execution is about to commence. I can hear behind me the state's witnesses gathering, which they were bringing people in from all over the country who wanted to see this for the very first time. They had folks coming in from Arkansas, Louisiana, who wanted to get their first gander of what this is actually going to look like. And Kenny's family was here, the victim's family, the Senates were over here. They turned the gas on, and Kenny began to heave back and forth and back and forth over and over again. The back of the mask was affixed to the gurney, so every time he heaved, his face was hitting over and over and over again the front of the mask. There was saliva and mucus and whatnot coming out of his mouth and catching on the front of the mask, and the mask was drizzling down. It looked like a waterfall of body fluid. His skin, it looked like there were millions of ants underneath his skin going each and every direction. And his skin was like doing the wave, and his hands were clenching. And behind me, I hear one of the state's witnesses scream out, "Stop, stop, stop, my God, stop, stop, stop." I look to my left. The guards who were in the chamber with me, they start moving towards the door because they didn't expect what was happening. And of course, I'm scared as shit because I'm thinking if they're moving towards the door, I need to be moving towards the door. Elizabeth Stewart Riley, who was the regional director of the Alabama Department of Corrections. Really a talented person, first Black and first female warden of Holman Prison, first Black and first female regional director in the Alabama Department of Corrections. This was her brainchild, this nitrogen execution. She's sitting next to me, and she has on high heels. And she starts getting so nervous, I hear her tapping her feet over and over and over again. Later, I called her the tap dancing terrorist. And this keeps going, and he's heaving for almost 9 minutes. I mean, we're watching it over and over and over again. And they said, well, these were unconscious movements. He was looking at me. They weren't unconscious movements. He was looking at me. And of course, the whole time I couldn't help but think, you know, Jeff, are you gonna rip the mask off? I started crying. I'm not a big crier. Probably too much of an asshole sometimes for that. But I started crying, and I just didn't expect to get this dirty. Maybe that's a good way of saying it. I was willing to get dirty, but I didn't expect to get this dirty. I believe it was 24 minutes passed before he was pronounced dead. And he was breathing for at least 16 to 18 of those minutes. Of course, I thought to myself, you know, I'm going to get out here, I'm going to tell the world what happened. You know, Mr. Abraham Bonowitz, he had us a press conference set up. He was ready to go. I was ready to go. And we did. We told the world what happened. And I thought, they'll never do it again. There've been 4 since. Louisiana and 5. Anyways, there's been a lot since. And I got another one scheduled. I guess I tell that story, I guess because like a lot of y'all, it's not just a story for me. I love Kenny very much. But unfortunately, when I think about him, I see his face exploding. It's a nightmare. You know, with a lot of my guys, I call them my guys, but I actually have 2 women, so I'm gonna have to diversify once anything, they get a date or anything like that. But it's so hard. It's not a way that I expected to be doing. Some days, not what I want to be doing. But I guess that's the nature of being called to something. You find yourself in mixed spaces, mixed thoughts. I'm thankful for a lot of folks who are here. I could go round and round, but me and Charles, we done marched down the street together in Oklahoma. Me and Miss Jane were there together with Emmanuel Littlejohn. My dear friend Allie right here. Brother Jack, who's been lying for 10 years. Abe, where Abe go? We annoy the shit out of each other, but we are the best of friends. Well, I wanted to bring to y'all something that I'm going to invite Jack and Bo and maybe a couple others to participate in. But hold on. It wasn't perfect. Uh-oh. Jack, can you come and thank you? You're so lovely.
My pleasure.
I promise it wasn't for effect. I just couldn't find everything in my bag. Something that gives me a lot of hope is the idea that God is with us. I realize that we have people who are coming from all different types of faith perspectives here. This is about love, not about one religion or another. This is about a firm belief that love gives everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that we are all invited to give everything. And that when we give everything, we feed those who are around us. We make our society whole. Give me a second, Jack. Bo, the good news for y'all is we got a lot of ministers here. Gary, do we have a woman? I would love that. Perfect. Yay! All right. Even up here, you see a lot of different faith traditions. I did use some hand sanitizer earlier. That's right. Get dirty, that's right. Thank you, Bo. Thank you, Bo.
Thank you.
You good? Everybody good?
We're good.
On the night in which Jesus was waiting to die, waiting to be executed, he took bread, he blessed it, and he looked at his disciples and he said, "This is my body, broken for you." Thank you. I'm doing my best up here, y'all. We know a lot of broken bodies, don't we? Certainly, this is the body of Christ, but the scripture says that what you've done to the least of these, you have done to me. What you've done to those who are on death row, you have done to me. So this is the body of those who have been broken. In like manner, Jesus took the cup, he blessed it. He said, "This is my blood, which is poured out for you. As often as you drink it, remember me." We know a lot of folks who have spilled blood. Those who are died and those who are still alive spilling blood. They're here. The body, the blood. I'm going to ask, I realize there's going to be some folks here who might not want to partake, and that is beautiful and fine. But if you want to, we've got these wonderful, look at all these ministers. We have all of these wonderful ministers. Do we want them to come up here, or do we want them to go to them? What do y'all think? I didn't even think about that.
To the table.
Come to the table.
Yeah.
Okay. Allie's gonna come first because I told her to, so that people would, everybody would. Here. I think real quick. Okay.
Do you want a song?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll sing. You want me to come in first?
Yeah.
Okay.
You weren't supposed to eat it. Dip.
Thanks be to God. Let us break bread together on our knees.
Blood of Christ, the cup of salvation.
Let us break bread together on our knees. When I fall,
The blood of Christ, the cup of salvation.
with my face to the rising sun.
The blood of Christ, the cup of salvation.
Have mercy on me. Let us drink wine together on our knees.
The blood of Christ, the cup of salvation.
Let us drink wine together.
The blood of Christ, the cup of salvation. The blood of Christ, cup of salvation. The blood of Christ, the cup of salvation. The blood of Christ.
Mercy.
Oh, wow.
Let us praise God.
Well, originally from Atlanta. I went to Auburn. And yeah.
Let us praise God together on our knees. When I fall with my face to the rising sun, oh
Amen.
Lord, have mercy on me. Let us praise
Blood of Christ, cup of salvation.
God together on our knees. Let
Blood of
us
Christ, the cup of
praise
salvation.
God together on our knees. When I fall on my knees,
The blood of Christ, the cup of salvation.
to the rising sun, oh,
The blood of Christ, the cup of salvation.
have mercy on me.
Blood of Christ, the cup of salvation.
Bread together on our knees.
The blood of Christ, the cup of salvation. Amen.
Let us break bread together on our knees.
The blood of Christ, the cup of
When
salvation.
I fall on my knees with
Perfect.
my face to the rising
Blood of
sun.
Christ, the cup of salvation.
Oh Lord, have mercy on me.
Blood of Christ, the cup of salvation. Praise be to God. Blood of Christ, the cup of salvation. Blood of Christ. Amen. Good, just enough. Are y'all good? Did you take care?
When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy on me.
Amen. I'll finish up here. I think Abe had something he wanted to say in conclusion. But one of the special things that happens with each of my guys is one of the last things we do together when we're able to actually touch each other is that we take the Eucharist together. And so the meal that you just partook of or witnessed or whatever, that's the last communion that we have together. I hope that some of the words that have been said, whether it's from me or anybody else, gives you the courage to get in the dirt. These folks need you to get in the dirt. Not just a little bit, not just a toe, not just a finger, but all of you in the dirt. I'm going to give a benediction and I'm going to let, I mean, you know, you got to have a benediction. I mean, come on. And then I'm going to let, you want to say something quick? All right. All right, here we go. All right. You want to go ahead? You want to get the benediction before or after?
You can do it now, and then but there's some more good news. So
There's some more good news.
oh, good.
All right. Okay. Go to South Carolina, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, and anywhere else in which they're killing folks and get dirty. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. I'm ready. Thank you.
I turned it off, so turn it back on.
Okay, it's off. Turn it back. That's not it. You got it. Okay, you get it. It is. Let me have that thing. Okay. You hold on that. Jeff, you're not done.
I'm done.
Not done? You get to close out after. Okay. All right. We're almost done. Okay. We're almost done, folks, but I've got a couple of things, and I'm waiting for one more big thing. But we heard from Jan and Gabe Powell in Idaho. Is it still on? No, I can't hear it. I think it's off. Yeah. I'm going to speak as loud as I can because I was praying that the speaker is going to last as long as Jeff did. So we heard from Dave and Jan Powell in Idaho, who texted me to say that the guy that killed those students has agreed to a plea in order to not get the death penalty. So that's the good news. Thank you, Jan and Dave, for texting. I'm also waiting for still word from Delaware. And like I said, that can go to midnight or even later. So we don't know, but they haven't texted yet. However, there's something you need to know. When Bill and Kathy and Marietta and Rick stood up here holding hands at the very beginning of this event, the first time, just the four of them, they were just standing there talking to each other, and a police officer came and said, "You can't do that here." They said, "Do what? We're talking." He said, "It looks like you're praying. It looks like you're about something. Get off of the plaza." Where the marble starts, free speech ends. It hasn't always been that way. It used to be from curb to curb. You could not have freedom of speech in this space. And then a woman named Mary Grace wrote the First Amendment on a placard and stood next to a newspaper box. Is this right? Bolted to the sidewalk, a newspaper box. And she held a placard with the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, which, thank God, still exists today. And she was arrested for that. Right. Come up here, come up here. Mary Grace is here, everybody. Hey. And she was threatened with arrest. And what do you want to say as loud as you can about that experience?
It was fascinating. It was fun. It's great to push the law to do what it's supposed to do. Yeah, I met my husband in 1978 when I was arrested at the Pentagon, and he took my case for free. Kathy. So, and it was a love story of 44 years, and he passed away a couple years ago. But yeah, he took this case, and it was when Thurgood Marshall was on the court, and Senator O'Connor was on the court. It was the Burger Court. It was fascinating, and it went all the way up to the civil courts. I was going to get arrested, and my lawyer said, no. If you get arrested, then it'll just go through criminal court, and it won't. You won't win. They'll just say too bad. So it was an interesting legal argument that took us all the way to the Supremes, and we won 9-0. It was fascinating. But I'd love to sing a very short song.
Well, yes, please. But the moral of the story is Mary Grace freed the sidewalk for all of us.
The First Amendment freed this sidewalk for all of us. So
sing a song, and then we'll hear it close. And then before we close up, we're going to get a group picture of everybody.
Oh, good.
Okay, so.
thanks. I also want to say my niece is in prison. She was later diagnosed after a terrible murder. She was later diagnosed with schizophrenia. She's in prison at Patuxent in Maryland. And the first question my daughter-in-law, who's a lawyer, said was, Maryland doesn't have the death penalty, does it? So thank you for everyone who has worked tirelessly for abolishing this ridiculous thing. How can we kill people who kill people to show that killing people is wrong?
Yeah.
Who comes up with that kind of phenomenal ridiculousness?
Yeah.
Okay, so cry heart, but do not break. Your love is needed for days to come. Cry hope, and then cry freedom. Cry justice till the work be done. Cry heart, but do not break. Your love is needed for days to come. Cry hope, and then cry justice. Cry justice till the work be done. Cry heart, but do not break. 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 Cry heart, but do not break.
Thank you, Mary.
God bless you.
Sacred space, sacred songs, sacred stories. Let's show appreciation for all that we've heard tonight. Some of us may wear a collar or a cassock or even a t-shirt. Whatever we have on, let's be sure to continue to radiate, to proclaim, to demand life over death, love over fear, to say no to executions, do not kill in our names, because the answer is love and compassion for all of humankind. God bless you all. Good night. Thank you. Thank you, Jack. And now, before we close, still no word from Delaware, but if you were late in coming, I'm going to share with you that Delaware is hopefully today going to vote first of 2 times it has to do this. That's in order to accomplish a constitutional amendment. The legislature has to pass a bill 2 sessions in a row. So this is the first try, and we've got it through the House, and we got it through the Senate committee, and it is on the agenda for tonight. And as it is always happens in the last day of a legislative session, it's going to go late, and we're waiting for a bill to come up. But
we're going to send a message to Delaware. And before we do that, we're going to take a quick group picture. So I want to invite everybody to come up here. Come on. Allie, can you set your camera over to the side? We need everybody. I'm going to see people bring your signs. Come on. Okay. Somebody help Ron. Let's go, you two, get up there. Everybody up, come on. We don't have time. Can you take this picture for us? Come on, everybody get up there. I'm doing a little bit. That's good work. Dave, start in on the side there. Kathy, Jeff, listen, everybody, this is important. It's important to me. It's important to all of us. Your face needs to be able to see this camera. This camera needs to be able to see your face. So make sure that your face is not being blocked right now. And give me a moment. Look over there, baby. All right, now don't go anywhere. Actually, you're all good. But this bell has been tolled outside of the prison in Delaware. It's the Delaware citizens opposed to the death penalty bell. It's been tolled outside the prison in Smyrna at about 16 executions. And then they abolished the death penalty. They gave it to us. We've taken it on. It's been tolled outside of state capitals and executions in Alabama and Indiana and Oklahoma and what other states, Charles? South Carolina. We're working, well, we don't want to go to Idaho, but anyway, tonight it's about sending the message to Delaware. So I want to invite you to toll the bell now. Watch your ears, but you pull it from the side. You don't have to pull it hard. Anybody who wants to step up and give that rope a tug.
Let them know also that Ohio is pretty close to abolishing it.
Hold on before you go. And last thing, Scott, what time do we have to be out?
Building closes at 9. We can't be in after 9.
All right. So what we need is to get this done, and we need everybody's help to get all the stuff into the building.